Right. And a very warm welcome to everyone who's joining us today for today's Live Well Live webinar. Just to introduce myself, for those of you who've not met me before, I am Ruth Taylor. I'm the in-house nutritionist for Boots Online Doctor Service and also a registered nurse, and also have a health and wellness coach qualification as well. Very much work in the whole lifestyle medicine arena. And we very much love bringing you these Live Well Live webinars as a method of just being in touch with all of you to support you on your weight loss journeys and really to myth bust as much as we possibly can and to answer any questions that you've brought along with you. Just to let you know, I'm based down in Hampshire. My Wi-Fi seems to be working very well, but we never know. And we've got the lovely Janie here supporting me today in the background. So thank you so much for being here as well, Janie. Just so you're aware, just in terms of the questions that you ask, if you have any specific medication questions around your own health journey, which is personal to you, please do direct those to your medication providers. We aren't able to answer those type of questions in these webinars. It's just not safe practice for us to do that. But we will be sharing some evidence, and we're going to be talking all about stress and why this is such an important element that we need to think about on these weight loss journeys. And it would be really interesting to hear from you why you've come along today, whether you've been to any webinars before, and whether you've really listened to any of our podcasts yet. We'd be really interested to hear. So do please fill in the poll, which we're about to share, hopefully, Janie, if you're able to share the poll, that'd be great. So just to let you know, the polls are completely anonymous. It really is, this is for our interest as much as anything. We want to know whether we're hitting it right for you, whether there's anything else we'd like to hear that you would like, do let us know. We're very interested in developing more resources for you. And we just started thinking about whether we'll do any seasonal Christmas orientated webinars specifically around food. So if that's of interest, do let me know. I'm just starting to plan those now. I can see we've got someone who's not been here before, and mainly people who have been here before. So welcome if it's your first or follow-up attendance. Really hope you go away with some helpful information at the end of today's session. And from the podcast perspective, about 3 people who are here so far have been listening to them regularly, and some people occasionally. Again, we hope that they're of interest and that they inspire you in some way. And also it's exciting because we've now got our replays of these webinars on YouTube. So that's something that you can log back into. If there's anything you missed or want to go over, you can watch those again. So we really hope all of these resources are supportive for you. So let's get cracking. Just to mention, if you do have any questions that you've brought along with you, do pop them into the Q&A box. If you can remember to put those questions into the Q&A box, that would be really helpful, just because it's easier for me to find them. And Janie, I know you'll be really great at helping me pick up on anything that I've missed. So let's see how we go. So what is stress? We thought it'd be really helpful to start by thinking, what is stress? And I think we often think of stress as being something that is emotional or mental, or that really affects our mental health. Again, got a little webinar poll to ask you. So let's have a look at that in a minute. And I wanted to know what your experiences were of stress and whether it was relevant to you. So these are a few of the sources of regular stress in our lives. I'm sure we could all name a few more. There might be particular people, particular situations at work that cause us particular stress. But we thought it'd be a good opportunity today for you to start thinking about where your stress falls in your life, what your triggers to experience stress are, and what happens when you experience that stress. Is it something that gets in your way of achieving your health or weight loss goals? And we know for many people that stress is one of those things that unfortunately can really undermine their progress and really get in the way of stepping into really living their best lives and managing this whole weight loss journey. So we're all familiar with stress. We've had a lot of stress in our countries and in our world over the last few years. So it's something that we're all managing in varying ways at all times. But I guess the whole purpose of today's webinar is to think about how stress affects us in terms of our health. And if you're unable to control the stress in your bodies in the long term, it will cause activation of something called the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight, flight, or freeze response, which can lead to fatigue and disrupted sleep. It can also lead to all sorts of habits around food. I'm sure some of us would be aware of that. And as we talked about in our sleep webinar, deprivation we know is one of the culprits for weight gain, causing increased hunger and snacking. So we've got a poll here that we've created. We'd just love to hear from you. There's about 30 or 40 people here at the moment, so it'd be really great to hear from the majority of you. This is completely anonymous. We can't see who's answering what. We just know that people are answering. So really interested to know whether this is news for you, whether it's something you were aware of before, that stress can really be a factor in undermining your health and also in affecting your eating behavior. And really, it's as much when we answer these polls, we want it to be as much for you to reflect and to think about what's going on for you. What is your behavior? What happens for you when you're stressed? I know, and this is something really personal for me, that when I am stressed, one of my natural behaviors, which I've learnt all through my adulthood, is to eat the wrong food. And it can be anything. So if there's the wrong food in my house or in my environment, it would be just so easy for me to eat that food and to overeat. And I know I'm not alone with that. And it's something I have to really take stock of and really take some mindful control over. So that's me. I'm sure other people in the room are probably in a similar boat. Be really interesting to see. So we'll just have a look at these poll results. I'm just going to end the poll. I can see around 70% of you have taken part in the poll. So thank you for that. It's really helpful and really interesting to look. So let's have a look at the results. So around 60% of you knew that or was aware that stress affects weight management. So that's great. So that means around maybe less, sort of 40% less aware of that. And in terms of eating behavior, 2 people have said it has no effect on what they eat. Well, I'm really pleased to hear that. So let's all learn from you. If you've got any top tips, we'd love to hear them. Many people, 75% of people, are using food to cope with stress, some sort of emotional evening eating, and also cravings seem to creep in as well, which is very common with stress. It's really good to be thinking about that. People are generally feeling stressed. Some people all of the time, quite a few people frequently, and some more occasionally. And these are some of the symptoms that people are experiencing. So headache is very commonly experienced, cravings for sugar or comfort food, mood swings and difficulty sleeping, feeling anxious, irritable, overwhelmed and fatigue and low energy. Lots of very unpleasant symptoms that everybody's sharing that they're experiencing. So thank you so much for sharing that. And it's really interesting to see the myriad of effects that stress is having on everyone here. And it's really helpful to know, I think, when you're in this situation that you're not alone. So stress is a really important factor that, believe it or not, contributes to your waistline as well as your mental and general physical health. Stress is something that we can all experience, but is often as a result of the demands that are made upon us, exceeding our capacity to cope. So it can be, as I often think about it, as almost being like a bucket, and we have this stress bucket. And generally, life, for a lot of people that I know, a lot of us walk around with a stress bucket that's pretty full, and then you get this little layer of extra unexpected stress that can just be the tipping point for you. Some people have less full buckets, they've got that little bit more wriggle room. And I guess the whole point of today's webinar is learning to take stock, learning to manage that stress so you can bring that level down in your bucket as much as possible. So that then, in terms of your physiological health, in terms of your weight management, actually, then things really can fall into place more easily. So We know that stress is something that we can all experience, but the risk of weight gain and accumulation of increased visceral fat is thought to be due to the activation of our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which happens when we are stressed. This is because of increased production of cortisol. We're much more likely to reach for highly palatable foods, and those are much more likely to be the high fat and high sugar foods. I guess it doesn't come as a big surprise, but it's really helpful to hear that it's not just you. We also know that certain vitamins and minerals can really help in terms of our stress response. So actually, in terms of how we eat, the foods that we eat, if we eat the right foods, we may be a little bit more balanced. We may have a bit more resilience to stress. So we're going to talk about that. We also know that lots of stress can impact on our mood and our weight loss. And for many people, it's been found to be that barrier that can really stop them from getting where they want to be. It can get in our way. Being overwhelmed by stress can trigger overeating, as eating can act as a sort of pleasurable diversion, but it also becomes, I think, a learnt pattern of behaviour. It can almost be instantaneous. You don't even know that you're reaching for that food, and you can find yourself eating it before you've even consciously made the decision to eat it. And unfortunately, it tends to be those junk foods that we turn to when we're stressed, as we're going to be sort of craving all of those more high fat, high sugar foods, the high salt foods. I guess the biggest problem is that learned behavior of comfort eating or comforting ourselves when we're stressed is, for many people, one of the things that can lead us to become emotional overeaters. But it also can be sort of like a really negative coping strategy for stress management. So that's why we wanted to talk about that. I'm going to go on now and just talk a little bit around the whole cortisol connection and stress and weight management. So we know that stress can have lots of negative effects on our bodies. We can see that from the poll. Lots of people are experiencing really horrible symptoms. So totally understandable that you're beginning to understand that, when you're stressed, you're going to have a myriad of health-related symptoms. But what we know is that stress can lead to weight gain, especially around our middles when we have high levels of cortisol. So when we're under a lot of stress, one of the hormones that we'll produce quite a lot of is this hormone called cortisol. We've talked about this, I think, in several of our webinars, but here's the link to stress. Cortisol is a steroid hormone that increases our blood sugar, and that does that by stimulating our liver to create glucose as fuel when we're stressed. So we're in that fight or flight state, which we might not even notice. We might just feel a little bit agitated. We're not going to be thinking, goodness me, I'm in a fight or flight state. We're just going to be feeling a bit on edge, agitated, anxious. The first you might know is that you're reaching for something that you perhaps would have chosen not to eat had you had that mindful moment. But it also stops cortisol. Also, not only does it increase our production of glucose, it also stops our pancreas from releasing sugar. So here is the biggest problem. So we've got more blood sugar, and we've also got the counterbalancing effect of higher cortisol preventing our insulin from working so effectively. And we know that we need that insulin to bring the glucose into our bloodstream. So it's really important, or into our cells, and get it out of our bloodstream. So it's really important that we manage stress, we manage that cortisol, because otherwise we're going to end up with high blood glucose, and we are going to find it very difficult to balance our blood glucose levels. And one of the things that we know, and hopefully you also know now if you've been coming along to these webinars, is that managing that insulin, managing our blood glucose, is absolutely the cornerstone of managing how we lose weight. All the while we've got this sort of imbalancing going on within our blood glucose levels, then we're going to find it very difficult to lose weight in the long term. Also, when we have high blood sugar levels, we'll also have more cravings for higher sugar foods. So it sort of like turns into a bit of a vicious cycle. So it's really important that we start thinking about this. We also know that over the long term, higher blood sugar levels will lead us to the development of insulin resistance and also pre-diabetes and diabetes. And what you may notice in the short and longer term is that you've got that weight gain and you're really struggling to get the weight off around your middle. That tends to be where we store the fat, is around our middle when we have high cortisol levels. And for many people that they say that that is one of the harder places to lose that weight. So we also know that there is quite a lot of evidence that suggests that cortisol will lead to that accumulation of visceral fats. That's that fat that sits around our organs. We know that that's a particularly unhealthy fat. And as I was saying just now, we know that that high stress level is going to lead us, all of us, we're not immune to this ourselves, to sort of those behaviors that help us to offset those stress feelings. We might not be able to prioritize cooking healthy foods. We may end up snacking on the wrong foods and fill ourselves up on the wrong foods. So we haven't got the appetite to eat healthy foods. And it becomes a bit of a vicious circle. So if that's you, don't worry. We've got some good news about what we can do to offset this whole pattern of behaviour. Hello to everyone. So if you've got any questions, do let me know. I hope this is making sense. And I hope it's not really awful news. I hope it's just refreshing what you perhaps already knew, or just putting a little bit more awareness into that whole pattern of what's going on. So what can we do? That's the next question. What can we actually do to help offset this stress? So the good news is that there are all sorts of strategies that we can put in place, but we have to take control, really. We need to start by understanding our triggers, the signs that perhaps you're experiencing too much stress. These might be things like having difficulty concentrating, having headaches, cold hands, tight muscles, a nervous stomach, having clenched teeth. Some people will find that their breathing rate becomes a little bit faster. They might feel a bit edgy, a little bit fidgety, irritable, withdrawn. There's a whole myriad of symptoms that can go on. And then you need to really recognize what is triggering those feelings for you. Is it a situation at work? Is it a particular person? Is it, when you get on the scales on a Monday morning, does that make you feel stressed in anticipation? Is it, what is going on for you? Because I think we have to all really just get a sense of perspective here. It's going to be different for each and every one of us. You need to take time to take the reins and put some strategies in place so that you can really start just really stepping away from those negative effects of stress. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to calm down or to calm our systems down. So what we know is that walking, swimming have been found in the research to reduce the endorphins and to support relaxation. We know that self-care and time out are really important strategies, and also time to focus on your health, to take small and manageable steps. We know that you need to recognize your stress trigger and plan to avoid this as much as you can. Or for me, realistically, I don't think we can always avoid that stress. But what we can do is we can be mindful of the trap that stress can trigger for us. So if it is that there are particular days of the week that are going to be particularly stressful, or if there are particular people in your life who are going to trigger you to feel a sense of anxiety or stress, is it that then when you experience those feelings, that will trigger an element of overeating, emotional eating, or comfort eating? So what can you do to prepare? Can you prepare some healthy snacks? Are you making sure that you're eating in a way where you're, excuse me, I'm just going to take some water. Are you going to be able to eat in a way where you can balance your blood sugar a little bit more? If that is relevant for you, then I'd really recommend that you sort of just take another look at the core meal plan. This has been designed very much around the low glycemic approach to eating and also the Mediterranean diet. So it's really boosting up your healthy foods, your sort of blood sugar management approach. So Janie, if you could share that, if you haven't already, that would be really good. If you can share the core meal plan, brilliant. Thank you for doing that. And so, yes, that is what we would really recommend. And then also thinking about some breathing exercises. So, there are certain things that you can do to really support your breathing. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. And yeah, so there are all sorts of things that you can do and all sorts of activities that you can undertake to minimize the effect of stress. So let's look at this breath work. So this is an exercise. I don't know if anyone does breath work, but this is an exercise that you can do at home that is really free, really simple, and really simple to learn. Thank you. So somebody does do this. So let's take a little bit of time to think about this. So this is a brilliant tool that can really help. And if we just talk our way around this box, this is called a box breathing exercise. And so if you look at the box, you've got a sort of 4, 4, 4, and 4. So what we would recommend if you've got the ability to do this is to work your way around the box. So you would start out on an exhale. So breathe out for the count of 4. You'd then hold for the count of 4. You'd breathe in for the count of 4 and hold again for the count of 4. So we could take a couple of seconds, a few minutes rather, to go around this. Now, just for those people who find holding for a count of 4, breathing out for a count of 4 really difficult to do, then what you can do in this situation is that you can reduce the sort of length of time and do it. Start off with a 2, a 2, a 2, and a 2, or a 3. You know, it's not designed to make you feel uncomfortable. Holding your breath while you're doing this technique can help with the build-up of, help to dispel some of the carbon dioxide levels that build up when we're stressed. And it can also stimulate the vagus nerve, which connects to the lungs. And so it can help to calm down and to support our parasympathetic nervous system to work more effectively. And this is thought to help us to be able to heal and can really help in terms of our sort of inner stress management. So this is really helpful, can really calm down that whole fight or flight, that anxiety response that we have, or that feeling of stress. This is a really good thing. And we will often use this as health practitioners, you know, in stressful moments in our clinics. Nobody knows that we're doing this. So it can just be happening in the background. If you're preparing for something stressful at work or at home, then we really recommend trying something along this technique. So let's try it. So what I would recommend that you do is you just sit comfortably. We're going to do a couple of rounds. So really, really just sit comfortably. We get your feet on the floor, put your hands resting in your laps. And then what I'm going to do is talk you through so you can try it out. So we're going to breathe in, counting to 4 very slowly, and feel the air enter your lungs. 2, 3, 4. Now hold your breath for 4 seconds, trying to avoid inhaling or exhaling. 3, 4. Slowly exhale through your mouth for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Now hold on to a full exhalation. And then what I want you to do is to then take another breath in, and we're going to go round again. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. And carry on doing that if you find that useful. But also, I really recommend that you practice that technique at home, because it's something that we can do really easily. And we don't need any sort of support to do that. We don't need to spend any money doing that. And actually, those free things are really, really supportive and helpful, aren't they? So give that a go and let me know if that helped in any way. But I personally find that when people talk me through that, I find it really, really helpful. You should find that your system feels a little bit softer. You feel a little bit more receptive and a little bit calmer. So keep this as a tool in your toolbox. We're now going to go on and talk about nutrients and why what to boost when you're stressed. So if stress is part and parcel of your everyday life, these are the type of foods that we would really recommend that you think about bringing in on a regular basis. What we know is that low levels of magnesium have been shown to increase the amount of physiological stress within our bodies. And we know that low magnesium status is associated with lots of symptoms such as, headaches and more inflammation in our bodies. So we know that magnesium can help in terms of reducing stress and anxiety. And when we have low magnesium, we're likely to experience more stress or a heightened stress response. So one of the things we can do is we can eat these foods that can bring in magnesium in a natural way. So those are things like beans, lentils, chickpeas, the dark green leafy vegetables, things like chard and bok choy, spinach, those type of vegetables are really great sources of magnesium. Nuts and also dark chocolate, and you really want to be going for that 70% chocolate. So see how you get on with that. Also, B vitamins. We know that when we're under a lot of stress and we're regularly under a lot of stress, that B vitamins are something that will naturally be used up quite sort of quickly within our system, within our bodies. So again, we're not recommending that you reach for a supplement. And that really is something that if you wanted to take a supplement, that we'd recommend that you talk to somebody on a one-to-one or got some very specific advice, because if anyone is taking medication, you shouldn't just really grab a supplement off the shelves because there may be a contraindication for that. So have a look at these foods because foods are generally safe. And obviously that is a really good place to start. So you want to be thinking about your B vitamins because we know we're going to be using loads of those when we're under a lot of stress. So things that we can eat to boost our B vitamins are things such as whole grains and legumes. Nutritional yeast is a fantastic source of B vitamins, as well as avocados, nuts, seeds. So see how you get on with that. And then additionally, vitamin C is something else that we tend to use a lot of when we're under a lot of stress. So that's something else that we can recommend that you eat foods that are rich in vitamin C. So all of the berries, the citrus fruits, peppers, broccoli, some apples. The riper the food is when it's picked, the more the richness of those nutrients is going to be in them when they land in your fruit bowl or on your plate. So these can be great. And then protein is really important because we know that protein can help to stabilize our blood sugars. And we talk about this a lot. So our equation for your minimal amount of protein, unless you've been given any protein restriction to follow, would be that sort of 0.8 of a gram per kilogram of body weight. And that's generally the sort of level of protein as our baseline we all need. And in some instances, we will need more protein than that. So, it can be really helpful in terms of muscle mass, but also this whole blood sugar stability is a really crucial element of this aspect. We also know that protein can help in terms of reducing inflammation and also boosting that sort of mood enhancing chemical serotonin. So it's a really important nutrient to be focusing on, especially if you're under regular amounts of stress. And just keep it simple. Don't overwhelm yourself. Go for whatever is the most simple. If you're under a huge amount of stress and you're really going off course because of the stress, then you need to really look at that self-care aspect of how do these foods become a reality for you. Don't overdo it. We don't have to be chefs. We just have to throw food on a plate or in a bowl and eat it. I hope that helps. So let's have a look. That is everything we're going to share with you today in terms of our recommendations around stress. So it's all around the breathing, the meditation. Journaling can be a fantastic way to offset stress. I don't know if anyone is journaling. Maybe making sure that you are going to bed and switching your lights out earlier, turning your electricity off, getting off your phones so you really respond and get better quality sleep earlier. All of those things can also help. So yes, have a think. Just to let you know, these are our next couple of sessions coming up. And I think we have a final poll that we're going to share with you. So hopefully that will be helpful. So great. Thank you, Janie. take a couple of minutes to have a look at the poll. Great. So thank you for taking time to do that. So good. So a lot of you are going to be looking at boosting your protein, moving more, 70% of you. Thank you. That's great. Breath work, meditation, healthy snacks. Healthy snacks can be really helpful, especially if you find that you're reaching for those less healthy snacks. So yeah, very much part and parcel of really just being prepared. Being prepared is so important. So thank you so much for having a look at that. And yeah, let's move on. I'm going to come now to your questions. Just to let you know, we are back next week and we're going to be looking at yo-yo dieting and how to really offset the effect of yo-yo dieting. We know that's a really important factor in terms of really thinking about your long-term health and your long-term weight management. We know that for many people that yo-yo dieting is a really important aspect of that because it's one of the things that trip people up, the sort of stopping weight and then regaining weight or stopping weight loss. So let's have a look. Sorry, I've got a really funny button on the front of my screen, which is why I'm being odd. How do you keep focus when I'm overwhelmed? Okay, sorry, things are popping up all over the place here. Hopefully you can't see them, but it's quite confusing. How do you keep focus when I'm overwhelmed? I eat and drink and sit. Okay, so now then, how do you keep focus? Right, so I think you have to really almost set some reminders, if you really are struggling with stress and it's really offsetting your ability to keep that focus, then you almost need to really do some journaling, really think about what's going on for you, what are the things that are getting in your way, and really understand what is helpful to you in terms of what's sort of upsetting the apple cart for you. Start there. If you figure out what that is, then in terms of finding your focus, really be prepared for those things that are going to derail you and take you off course. And then I think it's as simple as buying the foods that you know you need to eat and having them in the fridge. It's not that simple. We all know this is not simple. We wouldn't be here talking about it every week, would we? Let's be honest. But it's simple in as much as we can set ourselves up for success, is what I mean. So that's a simplicity. So be prepared, have the right foods available, make a shopping list, shop to your shopping list. Avoid shopping when you're really stressed or really hungry because we know we'll put all the wrong things. Really be mindful of if you have to have treats in your house, do you have to have them there for yourself or for other people? If you don't have to have them there, are they something you can actually just get rid of, give away, not buy? Because actually it's really tough when you're really, really up against it. It can be really difficult, can't it? So see how that is. Move your snacks somewhere else. If they're there for other people, put them somewhere else so that when you have one of these stressful moments and maybe you're a little bit less mindful in your activity and you just would automatically eat the wrong food, then if those snacks have moved somewhere else, then it can be really helpful to for them not to be where you're expecting them to be. So it sort of puts a break in that whole process. So you then wouldn't be able to just grab the snack. You'd have to put a little bit more thought in, and that thought might actually be the thing that stops you from carrying out the activity. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I explained that in a very roundabout way. How many circles of the box breathing does one need to do for it to be efficient at calming us down or our systems down? That's a really good question. I think that's a sort of a bit of a how long is a piece of string question, because I think actually it depends on how stressed you are. If you notice that stress early on, then you're only going to need 3 or 4 rounds, and you'll begin to. I personally find if I close my eyes, just take a couple of minutes to do that and really focus on my breath and on my breathing, I can now use it in a way where I calm down or feel that inner calm quite quickly. It takes practice. It's like any new tool, we have to practice it a few times. The first few times we might not find it that beneficial or helpful because we're almost focusing too much on what we've got to do and getting it right. It's only when we've learnt the process and we know what we're doing that we can relax into it and get the real relaxation. So practice it every day, practice it morning and evening, and then use it whenever you feel those sort of moments of stress and agitation creeping in. And once it becomes a learned behavior that you can do automatically, it can take the place of those less healthy snacks, can't it? So see how you get on. Let us know. Okay. Are there any protein shakes that are okay for your daily protein? Interestingly, I was on a call the other day. So from an amino acid perspective, which is what we get, when we chew our protein and we break it down in our digestive system, what we get as a result of eating that protein is that we will get the amino acids. So they're really good at providing protein, which is really good for repair and creating hormones and enzymes in our body. So we need protein for all sorts of reasons. But in terms of balancing our blood glucose, because it's already a really broken down product, it's less effective at sort of supporting even blood sugars. So that might be something to consider. So if you can eat a food source of protein and be prepared, then that would be even better. Somebody has asked about what it is that causes the blood sugars to rise. Sorry, what was that question? I saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I will try and find it. So where does the glucose actually come from when caused by cortisol? It's actually the cortisol that raises the blood glucose. So no, cortisol is a hormone. So cortisol is created when we're under stress. So it is a normal stress response hormone that's created when our body is experiencing a stressful moment or heightened stress. So it can be because we are in that fight or flight mode. When you suddenly got to run for a bus because you're going to miss it, or you've suddenly got to race to get somewhere on time, or suddenly somebody's put you in the spotlight and you've got to do something that you weren't anticipating, or you've just had a phone call and it's made you feel very agitated. All of those feelings will elicit a stress response in your body. That stress response is often adrenaline or cortisol, and cortisol will increase our production of glucose. So it's sort of like around that cycle. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, it's sort of quite tricky, isn't it? Somebody's saying if they get an urgent work request, I immediately need some fast-acting brain fuel, i.e. sugar or savoury calories. Is there a way to avoid that? That may be, it's really interesting, isn't it? This may be that is very much a learnt behaviour. So one of the things that we talk about in the whole sort of world of these webinars is also what we tell ourselves and actually how we become very much what we tell ourselves. So what I'm reading is that you have an absolute belief that, and it may be true, I'm not trying to undermine your own belief system, but it's just interesting to unpick it. What I'm reading is that you believe that when you have an urgent work request or you need to then have some fast-acting fuel or some savoury calories. So what is that? Is it real? Is it that you're having a massive stress response in that situation? If it is, what is your eating like the rest of the time? Have you got the resilience in what you're eating throughout the course of the day, throughout the course of the week, to actually be in a good position to not need that immediate response food? So that's where I'd start. I'd really start in terms of making sure you've nailed that protein, making sure that you're balancing that magnesium, those B vitamins, the vitamin C. Healthy fats are really, really important for our brain. So if your brain is really, really finding it difficult to create a response in those situations, really have a look at what you're eating, almost perhaps do a food and symptom diary over the course of the week, see if there are any things that perhaps you're missing out on. I find it quite interesting to just go away and have a look at what you're eating, highlight the different types of food with different colour pens, and you can get a sense of perspective across the week as to whether you're getting enough of those healthy fats, whether you're getting that protein in at every meal, where the sugar's coming in, is it creeping in all of the time? Just start analysing, because you can learn from just doing a really simple analysis at home. And when you get that sense of perspective around what's going on for you, you can start putting in, making some changes, just seeing how, if you balance those blood sugars the majority of the time by eating differently, following that core meal plan, then your resilience for stress may become higher. And also practice things like some meditation every evening, practice the sort of box breathing exercise, make it a sort of thing that you do. So you're bringing, if we're having a stress response whereby the minute we're feeling stress, our reaction is to overreact, or we're feeling immediately agitated, or, whatever the feeling is that you personally are experiencing, then it suggests to me that your bucket's quite full. So what can you do? I think what we all need to be doing in that situation is to lower the load in our bucket so that we've got that sort of level of resilience left so that we can cope a little bit better. Yes, so see how you get on with that. So I hope that's helpful. Apples is a good source of vitamin C. I do believe some apples have got vitamin C in. Again, it depends on how ripe the fruit is when it's picked. So for me, I will quite often buy some frozen berries because they are picked when they're ripe. They're not going to go off in my fridge, and I can just utilise what I need of them. So it's sort of about choosing your foods and making sure that they are appropriate for you. Great. So that seems to be, so there's a bit of interest being discussed here in the chat box from Ben and Madeline about resistance training. Interesting, we've got a meeting this afternoon where we're going to be talking about some exercise videos that we may be looking to create, so that will be really interesting. And we do talk about resistance training a lot in the metabolism webinar that we run, and also on the podcast around metabolism as well. Exercise videos sound like a great idea. Thanks for that, Susie. Really like your vote of confidence about that. I'm feeling inspired now. So yeah, anything else that you think that you'd like more of, we'd love to know. So thank you. Yep, so that seems to be all of your questions for today. So thank you. Somebody's asking if Wegovy reacts with any vitamins, etc. I haven't read it does. Interestingly enough, I am researching that at the moment. Just re-researching, because obviously all of the weight loss medications are relatively new medications, relatively new drugs. So the research is just really being published. So one of the things I'm looking at are there any specific nutrient needs around having those weight loss medications as part and parcel of your weight loss journey? For those of you who do, obviously this webinar is for anyone who is on a weight loss journey. You don't have to be taking a medication to be here, just to reassure you. But also just in terms of anything to avoid. From an avoidance perspective, I haven't come across anything, and the research is really not very strong yet about what we do need. But then layering in on that, I'm going to layer in the research around when you're overweight, what are your nutrient needs? What do we know about people who have been carrying a little bit too much weight for perhaps a few months or years? And are there any nutritional requirements in that situation that could help us to think about what you may need in this situation here? So hopefully that will be something that we will bring out at some point in the near future. We'll let you know. But yeah, I think generally, if you're eating a well-balanced diet, make sure that you are bringing in that protein, those healthy fats, and also making sure that you're eating the vegetables, the sort of low glycemic, the colourful vegetables. You really want them to be half of your plate. And some fruit as well at the end of a meal, sort of again, those low sugar fruits, ideally, so that they don't have an impact on your blood sugar, then you're doing well. And it might just be that you really need to just relearn your eating habits. And I think for many people, that's one of the hardest things because we are such creatures of habit. But it can, it can be really, really helpful. And yeah, so somebody's saying they've been on Wegovy and although it's expensive, it's really helped get your eating under control. One of the things we're really keen on, Lynn, is that you come to these webinars, you listen to all of the weight loss advice that we give you, because what we want is for it to be that this is it. We want this to be the long game for you. We want this to be the sort of time when you lose weight and you lose weight for good, and that you can keep it off. And learning new habits, relearning how to eat can be really helpful in terms of all of that. So I really hope that's been helpful today. It's been a little bit shorter than normal, but it's just me on my own. So hopefully that's been okay. We're going to be talking all about yo-yo dieting next week, and the week after we're going to be bringing back the perimenopause and menopause weight management. And yeah, really look forward to seeing you all then. Do let us know if you have any questions. Do let us know if there's any resources that you would like us to be creating for you. We're really keen to support you on your journeys. We really know that this is something you all want, and we really want it for you as well. So that is why we are here. Just really look after yourselves, guys. Have a great week. And I am inciting you to have a clementine, which is fantastic. Enjoy your clementine, Carol. Thanks, everyone. Take care. And Janie, thank you again, as always, so much for your help and for being here and supporting us today. And see you all next week. Have a good week, everyone. Take care.